life? We haven't met for a long time.
Yes, yes.
Busy, I suppose.
I was quite busy. And it's,
Yeah, should be self-imposed?
I can take it very easy too.
You can, but I suppose
But
not.
I don't want to, I'll become a vegetable. Or I'll become
Never take life easy.
axe-wielding man. I don't want to do that either.
But that's the pitfalls of the job that we have taken. Trying to quit, let's say, politics and still not quitting it. But how do you find the change from being beaten up to the presidency?
I'm a man with a certain philosophy of life. Changes from power to opposition to jails, they don't really affect me much. It's happened so often. And it hasn't really, I think life is a struggle. The whole life is a struggle. So whether you are in a happy position or whether you are in a difficult position, you have to keep struggling.
That's there. And in your case, I think that you got it so early on, those years that you spent when the came. Steeled you quite a bit. So that's also बहुत पुरानी है जी.
ये तो बड़े स्पोर्ट्स के राइटर होते थे और one used to see him. And then even in those days of struggle, he was part of the democratic movement.
You sir are leading Pakistan's delegation to the SAARC conference. How do you perceive Pakistan's role in this conference in particular to start with?
Well, Pakistan has been supporting the SAARC. We are keen that SAARC should develop. We are keen that it should develop along realistic lines. We want SAARC to move forward in tangible ways so that all the countries of SAARC should benefit from it. This is just another summit of SAARC. And as you know, SAARC summits take place every year. Unfortunately, it could not take place last year because the Indian government had some difficulties in hosting the conference and they postponed it to this year. But I see this SAARC summit as not an extraordinary session of SAARC, but as any of the routine annual sessions. Some preparatory work on SAPTA and others, important functions or institutions under SAARC would come up for discussion and finalization. We hope that some progress will be made there. We're also evaluating and seeing the progress made in some of the technical committees of SAARC. There are about 12 technical committees. Pakistan feels that we have not made substantial progress in some of the most important areas, especially that relating to agriculture, scientific and technological areas. There has been better progress on the cultural side, but we need to make progress in areas which affect the common man and the vast millions within the SAARC countries, and these are areas connected to amelioration of their condition, to poverty alleviation and so on. So I think we can concentrate more on those areas as well.
Mr. President, SAARC has been in existence for about a decade, but it has not been the kind of success that it should have been. What do you think are the reasons behind this lackluster sort of performance of this organization?
I don't subscribe to the view that it's been lackluster. I think multilateral and regional organizations like SAARC take time to develop. After all, SAARC will only be celebrating its decade this December, coming December. And I think in this period it has done fairly well. It's got a secretariat, it's got a secretary general, it has set up 4 centers in 4 countries of SAARC. It has set up 12 committees, technical committees. It's addressing important problems such as improvement in trading conditions between the SAARC countries. I think there will also be increasingly more emphasis on the role of NGOs and of people-to-people work within SAARC. So I don't think SAARC's performance has been dismal or lackluster. Of course, one could have expected better results, one could have had more results. But given the fact that there are serious bilateral problems between the SAARC countries, I think the progress of SAARC has been pretty good. The factors which are holding back SAARC are, I suppose, inbuilt within the charter of SAARC. If you cannot discuss bilateral problems and issues, and that was a decision taken long ago at Dhaka, then of course those problems which create their own tensions, which generate their own tensions, they keep the regional organization from growing better and faster than they would in the absence of those problems. Again, I don't think that those problems can be wished away or resolved within SAARC either. But perhaps on account of the existence of those problems, SAARC has not progressed as well as it could have if those problems had been resolved, either multilaterally or bilaterally. A classic example is that of Kashmir. Kashmir is the source of all major tension between India and Pakistan. If this core problem were to be resolved, all other problems would be resolved. I can say this with confidence. Then the objectives of SAARC would be able to be achieved much better. Like for instance, if the Kashmir problem is peacefully resolved between India and Pakistan, then there will be more resources available for transfer to the social sectors in both the countries. There will be much better prospects of high levels of and high volumes of trade between India and Pakistan. And similar is the case, say, between India and Bangladesh. If the Farah Barrage problem were to be resolved, the dispute between India and Bangladesh on waters, it will be much easier for them to move forward in other areas. Similarly, between India and Pakistan, between Nepal and India, between India and Sri Lanka. We hope that in other fora, whether it's the United Nations or whether it's United Nations plus bilaterally, Pakistan and India can move forward to a peaceful resolution of this problem. Because that is, I think, the major inhibiting factor in faster and better progress for the achievement of SAARC objectives.
Mr. President, India is regarded as the bully boy of the SAARC family. At least there is a perception in the SAARC countries that India, because of its intention and size, does have a role to play which does not serve the cause of SAARC. Whether that perception is true, that is one. And two, what can be done to integrate India into the SAARC structure and make it a more responsible member of the organization?
Well, India is regarded as a bully boy or as a shark, as some people would put it. It's India's own doing. Many countries of the SAARC feel that India wants to throw its weight around. And organizations such as SAARC, which are regional, really cannot flower until and unless there is the acceptance of the principle of national sovereign equality. If you look at ASEAN, there Indonesia is a much bigger country in terms of population and all that, and yet it has adopted a different attitude altogether, so we don't have that kind of a problem in ASEAN. If India were to adopt a different attitude, then SAARC could progress more. And in fact, if India were to adopt an attitude where respect for sovereign rights and respects for and equality of states was a major principle, then there will be lesser bilateral problems intra-SAARC. There will also be better prospects of peaceful resolution of those problems, and the entire atmosphere, instead of being vitiated, would improve. So there is this feeling that you talk about. But how to persuade India? Well, India has to accept that on its own. They have to accept the benefits that would accrue to them if they were to adopt that attitude. And I think with the changing scenario in the world, where trade and economic factors are playing an increasingly important role, sooner or later that feeling will have to seep through Indian leadership, that it really does not help in trying to be hegemonic, that it is better to move on the basis of justice and equity. So when we develop a movement for that, for justice and equity, within the smaller countries of SAARC, vis-a-vis India, it will help again. Of course, one does not want to create confrontationist groups within an organization like SAARC, because those are then self-defeating. But certainly a body of opinion could be formed which would make manifest to India the undesirability of pursuing any hegemonic designs.
Mr. President, the idea of regional cooperation hasn't caught up among the people. I mean, the member governments have been engaged in different exercises like holding conferences and similar other exercises. What can be done to make this organization a popular one among the masses?
Well, I think within the ambit of SAARC, and in line with the general trend in our region and in the world, non-governmental organizations are going to play an increasingly greater role. So, which means that apart from the government levels, at other levels, at the people's level, there will be increasing awareness of this. Some of the SAARC ideals are also espoused by different NGOs. There are different forums, may not be registered with SAARC Secretariat, but there are within SAARC countries different fora where besides government other organizations are also active. There is already an organization on law, SAARC Law, which is non-governmental. There are other organizations which are wanting to exert and to advance the cause of, say, human rights. There are organizations which are going to address poverty as a problem which is common to all SAARC countries. The question of women's rights and women's empowerment under SARC. I think that's an important area because women generally in all the SARC countries are discriminated against and are an underprivileged class of people. And similarly for education, there are groups. So we feel that as SARC develops and as these NGOs register with SARC, so there will be greater interaction between the SARC countries at the people's level too. But progress there also will really ultimately depend on how soon tensions can reduce between countries of the SARC. Pakistan does not have any problem with any other SARC country, and no other SARC country has a problem with any other country other than India. So India has problems with almost all the SARC countries. We hope that there will be a reduction in those tensions. If that happens, then there can be greater interaction.
So could we go to question 7 because...
This has been partially.
Okay.
yes.
The SARC forum bars discussion on issues such as Kashmir, but the ultimate future of this organization really depends on whether these issues such as Kashmir are resolved or not. Given these constitutional limitations that are there on the SARC organization, what do you think is the best way to reduce tension that you talked about between countries?
More so between Pakistan
And India.
Well, the constitution of SARC does not permit bilateral problems or contentious issues to be raised. Now, until and unless the charter is amended and changed, it will not be desirable, proper, or appropriate, or even allowed to raise those issues within SARC. But we have correctly analyzed that the major bilateral problems between SARC, specifically between India and Pakistan, are vitiating the atmosphere and not allowing SARC to progress as it can. Now, how best these can be resolved and at what levels and where, this problem between India and Pakistan, or problems between India and Pakistan, can best be resolved in multilateral forums like the United Nations, where the major core problem is already under discussion. It needs implementation. There are Security Council resolutions to that. There is also no bar to this issue being discussed at the bilateral level. Even the Simla Accord permits bilateral discussion and does not stop us from raising the issue at the United Nations. Unfortunately, India violated Simla Accord by moving forward in the Siachen area by disturbing the line of control. And ever since then, despite efforts by Pakistan to make meaningful and purposeful dialogue possible and to have a peaceful forward movement on this issue, India has stymied all Pakistan's efforts. They have blocked them by just reiterating their own position. And we've had 7 rounds of talks at the secretary's level which have led nowhere. That is why Pakistan felt that bilateral talks with India on Kashmir, or even on resolving our other issues, which are very, very minor compared to Kashmir, and which are also contingent on progress on Kashmir. That is useless. It's useless to carry on with that. Although we have never said that we will not engage in bilateral talks. Pakistan is willing at any time to talk to India, so long as these talks are meaningful and purposeful. And for that we have said that India should create a propitious climate which really amounts to certain actions which India should undertake, like removal of Tata laws, like a reduction in the levels of repression and brutality in Kashmir, like removing of the bunkers around Hazrat Bal. And now they're doing a similar thing in Chara Sharif. They are exacerbating tensions. They are increasing the repression against people, even where it is connected to vital and closely guarded religious sentiments. And the saint that is buried there in Chara Sharif is well respected, honored by all Hindus and Muslims. And yet the Indian troops there, the Indian administration, is hell-bent on pursuing their obsession. They've done it before in the Golden Temple against the Sikhs. They've done it in Babri Mosque case, where Indian troops stood by and allowed the Hindu extremists to demolish the mosque. And now they tried it in Hazrat Bal. Now they're doing it here. So we feel that the Indians will have to change their attitudes. They will have to come around to purposeful talks if they seek a peaceful solution, which they don't. At this moment they are seeking a military solution. We have to tell them, and we should tell them, the world should tell them, that military solutions to such problems are not possible. This is not East Punjab, that you cannot do through mere increase in force levels or in the level of brutality. You cannot subdue those people. Those people have arisen and they are fighting for their rights.
Mr. President, and oft heard the complaint of individual NGOs and those interested in making SAARC a success is that politicians in all these countries are disinterested in making common cause with them. You are a politician yourself. Do you subscribe to this point of view?
I think the leadership of Pakistan generally, and I'm not talking of the present government alone, I think all leaders of Pakistan recognize that India is a very large country, has a very large economy, much larger than Pakistan, has a population which is about 6-7 times more than ours, has a military machine which is much larger. How can it ever be in our interest to allow tensions to continue? Pakistan certainly wants peace. Pakistan wants peace on all its borders. Our own relationship with all other countries is almost of an ideal type, whether you look at Iran, whether you look at China. Our relationship with even our neighbors which are a little distant, not touching on our borders, whether you look at the Gulf area, the Middle East, Central Asia, China, etc., with Nepal, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh. Our relationships are excellent. But we just have this major problem of Kashmir, which is part of the unfinished item of the agenda of partition. And the Indians have tried to say that there is no dispute. The whole world recognizes that there is a dispute. Nobody has accepted India's acquisition of Kashmir and subjugation of Kashmir through their decrees. So the problem is there, and Pakistan leadership at all levels cannot and will not work for creating tensions. We would like progress to be made for resolution of conflict between the two countries. So there is no imperative for Pakistani leadership to do that. In India, the mere fact that they have chosen to go on a militaristic path shows that their leadership feels that through brute force they can do it. But Indian leadership should remember that a mighty superpower like the Soviet Union could not keep a people down, a country subjugated against the will of the people. And recent history has shown that this cannot be done. The cost ultimately becomes too great. It cannot be sustained over a long period. The people of Kashmir, on the other hand, are determined to fight for their rights. And each year, from 1990 onwards, the Indian leadership has been telling their friends in the West and has been telling its own people that this problem will be resolved within a year. Today is now, we are entering the 6th year very soon of Indian military build-up and Indian military action, and yet there is no movement forward. So maybe it is the Indian leadership that feels that way and that continues to try and browbeat its smaller neighbors, including Pakistan. Indians should recognize that Pakistan will not be browbeaten. We want a relationship of friendship and peace and equality and of mutual benefit for our people, for our trade. We want to live as good neighbors like we're living as good neighbors with others, but not to be subjugated by anyone, whether it be India or even mightier powers than India. So once that realization sets in, I think it will set in soon, because they are getting nowhere in Kashmir, then we will sit down and talk, I hope. But in Pakistani leadership, I assure you that despite some of the rhetoric that you find, there is no desire to keep tensions high. In fact, all our proposals so far have been to reduce tensions. If you look at the question of Kashmir, we have gone to all fora, multilateral, bilateral, to try and resolve it through peaceful means. If you look at the dangers of weapons of mass destruction, there too, right from 1974 onwards, when India exploded their atom bomb, Pakistan has gone out of its way to propose denuclearization of the subcontinent. We have taken many resolutions to the United Nations General Assembly for declaring this subcontinent as a nuclear weapons-free zone. We have several times made proposals that there should be simultaneous adherence to the NPT by both India and Pakistan, simultaneous regime of inspection by IAEA in both the countries. We have even proposed that a 5-nation group of the United States, Russia, China, India and Pakistan sit down to resolve this problem. We have even affirmatively welcomed the United States proposal for 5+2+2, which is the 5 Security Council members, plus Germany and Japan and India and Pakistan, to resolve this issue of weapons of mass destruction and nuclear proliferation. We have even proposed that in order to avoid a costly and very dangerous missile race in the subcontinent, that there should be a zero missile regime between India and Pakistan. So all our efforts have been towards peaceful resolution, reduction of tensions. That is the position not only of this government of Pakistan, but governments dating back from the 70s and even from before. It's been the same position.
Mr. President, what role do you envision for leaders like yourself in contributing to the cause of regional cooperation and SAARC at the individual level?
Well, I think we represent governments and we would like to make that level more effective rather than individual levels. I think when governments interact and when they wish to promote certain ideas, they can do it much more effectively. And as a representative of the government of Pakistan, I will try and do my best to promote the interests and the common interests of SAARC, because they benefit all of us. They don't just benefit one country or the other. But no doubt, contact and meeting with our leaders can be very useful. And this will be the first time that I will have the privilege and pleasure of meeting with the leaders of SAARC countries. Some of them I have had the privilege of meeting earlier, like the President of Sri Lanka, like the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, like the Prime Minister of Nepal. I had the pleasure of meeting him and talking to him.